So today I'm just gonna try to do a little bit of a voiceover on the speed art. All right, so for the image, I knew I wanted to have a lighter background and a little bit darker on the foreground, so I kind of did a lighting setup that way. I believe I have 3 lights in this. So there's a fill light, a backlight, and also a key light as well. So for the pose, I just wanted to go for like a generic pose with a Rasengan in my hand. My space is a little bit limited in my room and I have a different living situation than I did in the past, so it's a bit hard to get all my equipment out in the living room to have a bigger space. So this is what I came up with. By the way, guys, if you want to know how to use the pen tool a little bit better, I have a Photoshop tutorial for beginners on my channel if you guys are interested. Here I'm using a hue and saturation adjustment layer with a blend if slider to remove it from the highlights just so it looks more realistic, and I just made it a black color, and that's only affecting the darkest areas of my shirt. Same thing with the orange. I just used blend if to take it out of the highlights. It looks a little funny right now, but basically I'm gonna do another hue and saturation adjustment layer and just make that lighter, and then do the opposite, like take it out of the dark areas and only do the light areas, so it looks more realistic that way. If you guys want to edit this picture of me, you guys can just go to the description and download that for yourselves if you want to. Here I'm just doing a little bit of local dodge and burn to make the shadows more consistent. Okay, so for the hair, in order for it to be blonde instead of a darker brownish red, I use a exposure adjustment layer just to kind of brighten it up a little bit before putting any color on it. Then I use a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and I press colorize to make it a blonde color. All right, so if you see the two little squares on a layer, that means that I'm using blend if adjustment. So I'm either taking it out of the highlights or I'm taking it out of the shadows. All right, so this headband is just kind of painted on, and I just selected a black from the image, so it's super consistent. And of course, you always need shadows in the image. So I used a multiply blending layer to just add a little bit of a shadow underneath the headband to make it a little bit more realistic. So I found this cool toy that had the headband on it. The image wasn't great, the quality of it wasn't great, but I knew I could paint over it. All right, so I just want to keep making everything as consistent as I possibly can for photo composites. So I continue to paint and use hue and saturation adjustment layers and skew it into place as I go along to just make it believable for the image. All right, so here I start to build up the Rasengan, and honestly, I have no idea what I am doing at all. So I went ahead and I pulled up a reference photo, not to copy it exactly, but to kind of see how I could make the Rasengan in kind of my own way. And I just continued to build it up with screen blending mode layers, and I'm just kind of getting an idea of how it's gonna flow in the image. So this is kind of a little bit kind of like a rough draft almost, just to kind of see what it would look like. So I kind of wanted the energy to be flowing back behind myself just to create a interesting composition. I did end up doing that at first, but then I took it back because it looked way too much like Chidori. So I took it back because I really wanted to, like, I didn't want it to look like Chidori. I can save that for another edit sometime. Obviously, Naruto doesn't have a beard, and I look incredibly weird without a beard. I swear I do. I look like a kid. I look better when I edit it. I promise you, I look strange without a beard. So I did not want to shave my beard. That's not gonna happen. I don't want that. So I use frequency separation. So if you don't know what frequency separation is, basically it just separates the texture of the image and the color of the image, and you have 2 separate layers, and you could add layers in between them, and you can just paint color and keep the texture exactly how it was. So it's really, really strong technique, and high-end beauty photographers use it. Well, I won't say most photographers, but a lot of high-end photographers use the frequency separation technique. It's really, really powerful. So that's how I got rid of the beard. If you guys want to know more about that, let me know in the comments. All right, so after adding a background, I'm going to use the liquify tool to make my hair go inward a little bit, because it didn't really look realistic to me. Like a headband was tight on my head, so that's why I used that. So whenever I use frequency separation, I try my best to do it before literally anything, because here I have to work destructively because of it. Can't do local color grading on myself because of the frequency separation is on a separate layer, and it's overlapping the face. So it was really bad on my part to do that, but in order to combat that a little bit, I just use layer masks. So I'll just go down to my cutout, I'll select it by pressing Control and on the little thumbnail in the layer, and it will select myself. And then on everything that I want to change after this point, I have to make a mask on that layer. So it's kind of tedious to do it, but it's doable. So as you guys can see, I have the Chidori-like effect going behind me. I will change that later because that's way too much. Like, it doesn't look like Rasengan to me, in my personal opinion. At this point, I'm building composition, building the background. I'm not using AI. I am the grass is 3D. I made that in Blender a while back, and I'm just reusing some assets there, and I'm trying to just build the composition in a way that looks good. All right, so for one super important thing in compositing, shadows and the feet are so important for composites, because it can either make or break your image. I've had many images that just do not work for me. In this image, there was grass. I love grass because you can just use a minimum diameter brush and just stroke grass strokes on the feet, and it like instantly makes it look believable in the composition. Also, the shadows are so important. Every little thing that you put into a composite, you have to have a shadow for. You just have to. All right, so we're going on the last part of the edit, and here I'm just adding a little bit of some mountains in the back and fixing the Rasengan a little bit, just looking at things in detail as much as I can. I add a bit of fire and smoke on black backgrounds in screen blending mode behind myself to give off that energy that sometimes you see on Naruto. Maybe it's not the most accurate, but it looks cool, so I'm good with it. All right, so I start to go in camera raw filter to do a global color grade. I always do that when I'm finished with the composition, and I just bring the image together like that. I do a little bit of local dodge and burn just to get rid of things that are distracting me on the image, and I use a color balance adjustment layer to do more global color grading on top of everything. Also on this image, I used a filter, I think it's like a neon filter or something, or an outline filter, and it kind of made the image look really cool, so I just kind of went with it. I also did that thing where I compiled everything into a new layer and double click the layer, and I unchecked green and blue on it, so it's just red. So whenever you move the layer around, it's like everything, but it's just red. And it kind of makes a cool effect. It makes everything like that, so it kind of brings the image together more, and it kind of gives it like a digital kind of, like I would use it more in Cyberpunk, but it kind of just it just looked good to me on this image, so I went with that. All right, here is just the final things I do. I sharpen the image, especially in the face, and I put noise on top of everything to kind of bring it together even more. A lot of people that do movie posters put noise on top. I personally like the look a lot, so I did that as well. Let me know if you liked the video. That's all I have for you guys. Have a good one.